Today we share the NDE of Michelle, a lawyer from Atlanta, Georgia, United States. On October 12, 2024, Michelle was driving to an important client presentation. While weaving through the morning traffic, her mind was distracted with thoughts about the upcoming meeting. Quicker than expected, her car reached an intersection, and suddenly Michelle saw the large flash of semi-truck headlights straight ahead. She then heard thunderous screeching of tires, and everything went black. What follows is Michelle's NDE journey, where she learned celestial insights about the spiritual tradition of fasting.
I was surrounded by an indescribable light, so pure and intense that it seemed to penetrate every fiber of my being. And there, standing before me, was Jesus. His eyes held a depth of understanding that made every achievement of my previous life seem utterly inconsequential. "Michelle," he said, "we need to discuss something important. Fasting. Humans have monumentally misunderstood fasting," he explained. "It's not a diet. It's not a performance. It's a sophisticated spiritual technology designed to recalibrate your entire spiritual ecosystem."
Lord Jesus Christ, the vegetarian, carefully explained the different types of fasting that can help provide spiritual upliftment.
First, there's the absolute fast, which involves completely giving up food and water. This kind of fast is often done in moments of deep spiritual crisis or when urgent intercession is needed, symbolizing total surrender. Then there's the normal fast, where you abstain from solid foods but can still drink liquids. This is the most common type in the Bible, often used when seeking divine direction or a spiritual breakthrough. Even Jesus practiced this during his 40 days in the wilderness, using the time as a period of intense preparation and divine connection. Next up is the partial fast, where you eliminate certain foods or food groups. The partial fast is a bit more flexible but no less significant. It's like Daniel's diet of vegetables and water, a choice rooted in spiritual discipline. For Daniel, refusing the king's rich food wasn't just about health. It was a bold stand for spiritual integrity and a way of staying aligned with his faith despite the cultural pressures around him. The John Wesley fast involves eating only bread and drinking water, usually for spiritual preparation or seeking empowerment. For Wesley, this wasn't about deprivation, but about preparation. Before key spiritual gatherings, he would fast to sharpen his spiritual sensitivity, trusting that physical discipline could unlock deeper spiritual power. Lastly, there's the rotation fast. While primarily used for medical purposes, it carries a spiritual lesson about discernment and understanding what truly nourishes versus what might hinder.
After explaining these different types of fasting, Lord Jesus Christ emphasized their practical importance.
Jesus kept stressing how important it is to put these fasts into practice. As Jesus spoke, I realized that fasting is so much more than a religious tradition. It's a deeply intentional spiritual practice, a way to realign ourselves with the divine and create a stronger connection to God's will.
Lord Jesus Christ revealed the two most critical mistakes people make when fasting. The first is fasting as a spiritual performance.
Jesus showed me vision after vision of individuals who transformed fasting into a spiritual performance. These were people who would announce their fasts on social media, who would dramatically talk about their hunger, who would ensure everyone knew about their supposed spiritual dedication. The visions were devastating. I saw countless spiritual opportunities squandered because individuals were more concerned about appearing holy than actually connecting with the divine.
The second mistake is fasting without a clear spiritual intention.
Jesus explained that fasting without a clear, specific spiritual intention was essentially spiritual malpractice. The most critical element of fasting, he explained, is your heart's intention.
Lord Jesus Christ then showed Michelle a vision of a woman fasting with pure intention.
A young missionary in a remote African village fasted with such pure intention that I could see spiritual atmospheres shifting around her. Her fast wasn't about personal achievement or public recognition. It was a genuine cry for divine intervention in her community.
Lord Jesus Christ continued to explain the profound spiritual principles behind fasting with intention.
First, he talked about spiritual alignment. Fasting, he said, opens up a unique connection with the spiritual realm. By temporarily stepping away from physical sustenance, you're showing a deeper hunger for something greater, spiritual nourishment. Next, he described intentional margin. In a world that's constantly loud and filled with distractions, fasting creates space for quiet. It's like clearing out the static so you can hear God's voice more clearly. Then there was the discipline of surrender. Every pang of physical discomfort during a fast is a reminder, a chance to let go of human desires and align yourself with God's will. It's about learning to prioritize the eternal over the temporary. Finally, he shared the idea of communal spiritual power. When people come together in fasting, there's a kind of spiritual synergy that happens. It's not just individual growth, it's a collective multiplication of spiritual energy and power.
Also, Lord Jesus Christ took Michelle back in time to show her the historical and spiritual significance of collective fasting.
Look at the biblical examples, he said, and suddenly, I was witnessing historical scenes unfolding before my eyes. I saw Ezra leading 4,000 people in a collective fast, their bodies bent in humble supplication. The scene was raw, powerful, an entire community seeking divine intervention through unified spiritual discipline. Then came the vision of Esther, her courage radiating through a community-wide fast. The Jewish people united in prayer and abstinence, their collective spiritual energy creating a supernatural protective force. He showed me the nuanced layers of fasting in different biblical contexts. The Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, wasn't just a religious ritual. It was a profound moment of national spiritual recalibration. Every person, from the highest priest to the simplest citizen, would abstain from food, symbolically afflicting their souls, remembering their need for divine mercy and forgiveness.
Lord Jesus Christ then shared with Michelle some of the modern struggles and misconceptions about spiritual fasting.
Most people are afraid of fasting, he explained. They're conditioned by a world that constantly tells them to satisfy every physical craving immediately. True spiritual strength isn't about constant doing, but about strategic pausing. Fasting teaches you that your worth isn't in your productivity, he explained. Your worth is in your relationship with the divine. It's about learning to be, not just to do. Most people misunderstand spiritual disciplines, Jesus continued. They see fasting as a form of punishment or a spiritual diet. But it's actually a sophisticated communication technology between the human spirit and the divine realm.
Lord Jesus Christ laid out practical, simple steps to help people implement spiritual fasting into their lives.
First, he said, start small. Don't dive into a week-long fast if you've never fasted before. Begin with something simple, like skipping a single meal, and use that time to focus on spiritual connection. Next, have a clear purpose. Whether you're seeking guidance, interceding for someone, or pursuing a personal breakthrough, make sure you know why you're fasting. Then, create accountability. Find someone who understands the journey, a spiritual partner who can encourage you, pray with you, and keep you grounded throughout the process. The time you'd normally spend eating could instead be used for prayer, meditation, or diving into spiritual readings. It's about redirecting your energy toward God. Finally, he reminded me to be gentle with yourself. Fasting isn't about being perfect or meeting some rigid standard. It's about showing up with an intentional heart and pursuing a deeper connection with the divine.
Towards the end of the near-death experience, Lord Jesus Christ shared some final revelations into spiritual fasting.
Each moment of hunger became a prayer, each physical discomfort a channel of spiritual transformation. Your body is more than a physical machine, he said. It's a spiritual antenna. When you fast with intentionality, you're essentially tuning that antenna to receive divine frequencies. Your greatest spiritual breakthrough, he whispered, will come not through achievement, but through surrender.
Then Michelle's soul returned to her body. Her eyes opened, and she was in a hospital room. She had been clinically dead for 8 minutes, and the doctor said it was a miracle she survived. After the NDE, Michelle began to implement spiritual fasting into her own life.
My life transformed. The relentless corporate drive was replaced by a profound sense of spiritual purpose.
Thank you, Michelle, for conveying these insights into spiritual fasting. May your NDE inspire many to seek a deeper connection with the divine realm by fasting with pure intention and modesty.
Please seek medical guidance from your healthcare provider before attempting a fast.